My neighbor's surprising assistance altered everything. You won't imagine what occurred. I always thought my life was flawless. 8 years of marriage, a lovely home nestled in a serene neighborhood, and a partner I believed I could rely on entirely. We may not have been the most fervent couple, but we shared a sense of stability, a quality I deeply appreciated. My partner toiled through long hours, frequently returning home late, weary from a relentless series of meetings. I spent my days at home, crafting my own timetable, immersing myself in various hobbies, and now and then engaging in conversations with my neighbors. A neighbor in particular caught my attention, a warm, approachable individual who resided right next door. Though we weren't particularly close, there was always a smile exchanged when our paths crossed, occasionally leading to brief moments of small talk. I never gave them much thought beyond that. My attention was directed towards my marriage, on preserving the life we had created. However, there was an unsettling feeling in the air lately. My partner had grown increasingly distant, perpetually absorbed in their phone, laughing at messages that remained a mystery to me. They asserted that their workload had intensified, yet the late nights became increasingly common, and the justifications grew weaker. Initially, I reassured myself that it was insignificant. Individuals become occupied. Pressure transforms individuals. Yet, the heaviness in my gut lingered on. I began to observe more closely. How they turned their phone aside as I passed, how their meetings always appeared to drag on late into Fridays, how they ceased to spark conversations like they once did. I attempted to set it aside, convincing myself that I was merely overanalyzing. Yet, one fateful evening, an event unfolded that I simply could not overlook. I was taking out the trash when I caught sight of my neighbors lingering by their porch, their expressions tinged with uncertainty. They caught my eye and offered a subtle nod, yet something in their expression compelled me to hesitate. Before I had the chance to utter a word, they interjected. "Greetings," I found myself pondering whether to share this, but I happened to catch a glimpse of your partner the other evening at that new eatery on 5th. I furrowed my brow, perplexed. "It was likely a work dinner," I remarked, trying to stifle a laugh. They paused, uncertainty lingering in the air. Perhaps, yet they found themselves in the company of others. Something in my chest constricted. The words of my neighbors carried no accusation, only a sense of caution. They refrained from pressing, avoided assumptions, yet the implication lingered unmistakably. I attempted to appear nonchalant, dismissing it with a faint smile, yet my thoughts were already in a whirlwind. That night, as my partner returned home late yet again, presenting the same weary excuse, I observed them with heightened scrutiny. Their averted eyes, the way they hurried into the shower without a word of good night, it all clicked into place now. I wished to be mistaken. I had to be mistaken. Yet, beneath the surface, I was aware all along. Uncertainty morphed into an all-consuming fixation. I began to observe every detail, the way my partner's phone seemed permanently glued to their hand, the newfound excitement for cologne that had never caught their interest before, and the mysterious charges appearing on the credit card. My thoughts surged with potential, yet I required evidence. I had no intention of making accusations without having the facts straight. One night, as they stood in the shower, I noticed their phone vibrating on the nightstand. My heart raced as I extended my hand toward it. A name I didn't recognize appeared on the screen, accompanied by a message that broke through my defenses: "Miss you already, can't wait for Friday." My hand shook with anticipation as I scrolled. The thread brimmed with late-night dialogues, shared secrets, and images that spoke volumes, leaving no space for uncertainty. The person I had placed my trust in for 8 long years was leading a secret existence, sharing moments of closeness with another while returning to me as if everything was perfectly normal. I felt an overwhelming urge to scream, to cry, to hurl my phone across the room, yet all I could manage was to sit there, utterly numb. As they emerged from the shower, a sudden stillness enveloped them, their gaze locking onto the phone cradled in my hands. For a moment, silence enveloped the space, punctuated only by the rhythmic sound of water dripping onto the tile. Then, their expression transformed from shock to something more frigid. What are you doing with my phone? I chuckled, yet the sound felt empty. Is that truly what concerns you? Isn't it the fact that you're being unfaithful? They didn't even attempt to refute it. Instead, they sighed, running a hand through their hair as if this were merely a trivial annoyance. It's not what you imagine. Then clarify it, I retorted. They paused for a moment, then shrugged it off. I am uncertain. It simply unfolded. Their tone was devoid of inflection, lifeless, as if they were merely talking about the forecast. I never intended to cause you pain. Something within me broke. You didn't intend to. You've been deceiving me for months, lurking in the shadows, returning home as if nothing is amiss, making me question my own sanity for having any doubts. My voice faltered, yet I compelled myself to press on. Who could it be? They let out another sigh, as if I were draining their energy. Just a colleague from the office. Merely an individual. As if all our moments shared held no significance. As if I were invisible. I could no longer bear to gaze upon them. I snatched my keys and stepped outside, my heart pounding, thoughts swirling in my head. I found myself wandering without a clear destination in mind. I simply had to escape. Before I knew it, I was standing at my neighbor's door, almost as if drawn there by an unseen force. The door swung open, and the moment they laid eyes on me, no questions were asked. They simply moved aside, granting me entry. I was caught off guard by my own emotions. As soon as I took a seat, it all came rushing out. The treachery, the deceit, the way my partner gazed at me as if I were the source of all issues. My neighbor absorbed my words in silence, their face a mask of inscrutability. When I finally ceased my words, they refrained from offering hollow condolences. They simply inquired, "What is it that you wish to pursue next?" I found myself without a response. A part of me yearned to unleash a torrent of words at my spouse, to seek an explanation that would unravel the chaos and bring clarity to it all. Another part of me longed to believe that none of this was real, to awaken and discover it was all just a figment of my imagination. Yet, beneath the surface, I understood that this was beyond repair. Once trust was shattered, it was a fragile thing that could never be fully restored. Days slipped away in a haze. I kept my distance from my spouse, making every effort to stay away from the house whenever I had the chance. My neighbor transformed into a steady presence, providing gentle support without any pressure. They delivered coffee to me each morning, extending invitations for walks whenever they noticed me descending into a spiral. I discovered that I was revealing parts of myself to them that I had never shared with anyone before. One evening, after yet another long, exhausting day of feigning that all was well, they surprised me with dinner. "You need to eat," they said simply, placing the plate before me. It was a seemingly minor act, yet it resonated with me more deeply than one might expect. My partner once engaged in actions like this before they lost interest. I gazed up at my neighbor, truly observing them. For the first time, I noticed how they always seemed to know just what to say, how their presence eased the weight in my chest, making it a little lighter. I sensed a change within me, an unfamiliar feeling that I wasn't quite prepared to define. Guilt seeped in almost immediately. Wasn't it too soon to feel anything? My marriage had just shattered. I was meant to be in mourning, yet I found myself captivated by the way my neighbor's gaze softened as it met mine. Yet, the reality was that I had been feeling isolated for quite a while, longer than I was willing to acknowledge. One night, as we sat outside in a comfortable silence, they turned to me and said, "You deserve better than this." Their voice, though soft, carried an undeniable confidence. Words eluded me. No one had ever expressed that to me before. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to entertain the notion that they could be correct. Understanding washed over me in surges. At times, I sensed a surge of strength, prepared to move forward and let go of what once was. On certain days, uncertainty slinked in, murmuring that perhaps I was exaggerating, that maybe I could piece together what remained. Yet, each time my gaze fell upon my partner, betrayal was all that met my eyes. It was beyond repair. I initiated the process for separation. The exchange was succinct, frosty, and purely transactional. My partner hardly responded, as if they had already disengaged long before I uncovered the reality. Perhaps they had. I anticipated a confrontation, perhaps a heartfelt apology, yet all I received was a lackluster response. I never imagined it would conclude in such a manner. That was the moment. 8 years diminished to a mere shrug. Progressing ahead proved to be a challenge. The house resonated with a profound emptiness that caught me off guard. I convinced myself that solitude was essential, that I had to mend my wounds before allowing anyone else to enter my life. Yet, the reality was that someone had already taken that step. My neighbor stood by me through every moment, never seeking anything in return. They remained, not pushing or attempting to impose anything, simply existing in the moment. And somewhere along the way, that subtle presence transformed into something greater. One evening, as we sat on their porch, watching the sun dip below the rooftops, I turned to them and finally voiced the thought that had been lingering in my mind. For an extended period, I found myself devoid of happiness. It was the first time I had acknowledged it, even to myself. They refrained from saying, "I told you so." They merely nodded. "I understand." The quiet lingered in the air, yet it held a certain ease that felt just right. It was as if clarity had emerged, as though a silent truth had at last found its place. In that moment, driven by an instinctive urge, I extended my hand towards theirs. They remained close. I was still unaware of what this was. Perhaps it was merely a sense of comfort, or perhaps it marked the beginning of something entirely new. Yet, for the first time in ages, I felt a sense of courage to uncover the truth.